Good morning, Year 4s. So our lesson today is to calculate using the inverse. So that's our learning objective. Our vocabulary will be multiples, known facts, equal, inverse, multiplication, and division. And our success criteria is to recall multiplication and division. So we need to think about the methods that we can use, which is the second step. And then the top step is to understand the inverse. So over the past 3 weeks, we've been looking at lots of different multiplication and division methods of how we can divide and multiply. So we're going to use all of this knowledge in today's lesson. So to begin with, we'll do our starter. So I'd like you to pause the video and do the starter now. There's no starter on Microsoft Teams today, so everybody will just be doing it on a piece of paper in front of them. Okay, well done. And these are your answers. So pause the video and mark your work. Okay, perfect. So today's big question is, can you create 4 sums with these 3 numbers? So 2 division and 2 multiplication sums. So I'd like you to have a look at the number 7, 6, and 42 and think about what 2 multiplication sums and 2 division sums you could make with those 3 numbers. So I'd like you to pause the video and write those down on a piece of paper. Okay, well done. So if you had done division sums first, I hope that you would have noticed that when we have a division sum, most of the time, the whole number, the biggest number, is the first number. And then we can divide by a part, so divide by 7, which will equal 6. We wouldn't even need to work that out because we've got the 3 numbers here already. And then we could do 42 divided by 6 equals 7. And then we could multiply 6 by 7 equals 42. And we know that when we are multiplying 2 numbers together, it creates a bigger number. And then we would have done 7 multiplied by 6 equals 42. Okay. Okay, so by doing these sums with these 3 numbers, we have created 2 inverse. We've used our inverse knowledge. So basically, the inverse of multiplication is to divide, and the inverse of division is multiplication. So inverse means the opposite. Okay, so it's doing the opposite thing. So with division, we've got a big number and we're dividing it by another number to create a smaller number. Whereas with multiplication, we've got 2 small numbers to make a bigger number. So it's doing the opposite thing. But we can use division and multiplication together to help us get answers. So we call 3 numbers, these 3 numbers are a number family, and they can create 2 multiplication and 2 division sums. So if we look at these ones, 5, 6, and 30, think if you can make 2 division and 2 multiplication sums out of those 3 numbers. Okay, so if we did our division first, we would have our bigger number, our whole number first. So 30 divided by 6 equals 5. So we've used those 3 numbers. Then we use the same 3 numbers. 30 divided by 5 equals 6. And the multiplication is the opposite, the inverse. So we've got 2 smaller numbers, so 5 and 6, creating a bigger number, which is 30. And then 6 and 5 equals 30. Okay, so why do we learn the inverse? So we learn inverse to be able to help us work out problems. So for example, if I've got this problem, 6 times something equals 168, how would I work this out? It's quite a tricky one because 168, if we had to count in multiples of 6, would take us a really long time. So we can't just use our normal 6 times table. So we can't just go 6, 12, 18, 24. Eventually, we would get to 168, but it would take us a really long time to get there. So we can use our inverse to help us. So we know that the inverse of multiplication is division. So if I had to write this exact sum as a division sum, think about how it would look. Okay, I would put 168 as my whole number at the beginning of my division sum, because that is where the whole number goes. Then I'm going to divide by 6, and it'll equal something. So the answer that goes here is going to be this answer. Okay, so basically I've just created, from this multiplication sum, I've created an inverse sum to look like that, because all these numbers work together. So instead of timesing something by 6 to get 168, I can do a division sum, which will take me a lot quicker if I use the bus stop method to work out the answer. So I'd write in 168 divided by 6. Okay, so 6 cannot go into 1, so I need to regroup it. And then 6 goes into 16 twice, so 6, 12. So we'd write that up there. And then we'd think about how many are left over. And we know that there are 4 left over. So we'd have to regroup 4 and join it to 48. Okay, then 6 into 48. So hopefully you know your times tables to know that answer. But if you didn't, you could carry on with your multiples. So 24 and then 30, then 36, then 42, and then 48. And then we can see it goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. The answer is 28. So once you've got that answer, we can add it in over here. And because we know that these 3 numbers can be used to also make a multiplication sum, like we saw in the previous 2 slides, we automatically know that 28 will go there as well. So sometimes if you get a tricky sum like this, it's easier if you use your inverse knowledge and work it out. And we still will have to do a method. We'll still have to do a bus stop method or a multiplication method, but it's going to be a lot easier than counting in 6s all the way to 168. Okay, so if we look at this one, okay, so it's a similar question. 7 times what equals 63. Now, if you get something like this, it is actually slightly easier, because if you know your 7 times table, you will know that something times 7 equals 63, and that's quite a small number, so you could work that out. But just to show you, so the inverse would be 63, because that's our whole number. Then you would have your divided by, then you would have 7, so we'd divide by 7, and then that would equal whatever number goes there. But most of the time, it's easier to use your multiplication knowledge to work it out. So if you know your 7 times table, you will know that 7 times 9 is 63. Therefore, 63 divided by 7 equals 9. Okay, so sometimes you won't need to use a method. Sometimes there will be an easier sum for you to work out. Okay, so if we have a look at this one, sometimes you'll be given a division sum. So if you've got a division sum like this and you need to work out the whole number, that can be quite tricky. So you need to think about what information do we have if we're going to use the inverse. Okay, so I've got my whole, I don't have my whole number, because for division, my whole number goes here. So I've got 2 parts. So I've got 4, which is a part, and I've got 59, and it equals something. And that answer would go here, because it's also the whole number. So now you can think back to a few weeks ago when we used our multiplication in column method to work this out. So we'd have to work out 59 times 4. So we would stack up our columns. So we'd do 59 multiplied by 4. Okay, and then we would start in our ones column. So 9 times 4 is 36. So we'd write that down. Over here. And then we would do 4 times 5, which is actually 4 times 50. So if we know that that is 20, we know that's going to be 200. So we would then place 200 underneath. And then we add them together. So it's 236. Therefore, our answer for 4 times 59 is 236. And therefore, our whole number for this division sum, which was our original question, is 236. Okay, so I hope that you can see that we can use the inverse to help us to work out a calculation. So in this case, we wouldn't be able to use addition or subtraction because addition and subtraction are the inverse of each other, whereas multiplication and division are the inverse of each other. So today's lesson, we've got bronze, silver, and gold challenge. So the bronze challenge will be to find number families of these 3 numbers, just like we were doing at the beginning of the lesson. So you have to look at the three numbers, write down the division and the multiplication facts. And I put a silver star here as well, because I think if you're doing the silver challenge, this would be a good way to get you started into thinking about these sums from these 3 numbers. So you're welcome to do this as well if you're going to do silver. And then for this one, I put silver and gold. So they all kind of link in with each other today. So these ones are facts that you should automatically know out of your head without having to do the bus stop method or column method for multiplication, because these are straightforward from your times tables up to 12. So this would be like a challenge for you as well to think about that mentally. And these are some more examples. So we're working with smaller numbers here. And then the gold challenge for today is looking at the bigger numbers as an answer. So all of these would require you to either do multiplication using the column method or bus stop method to work it out. So you'd have to look at your sum and think, okay, what is the inverse of multiplication? What's its division? What's my division sum going to be? And then work it out to get that answer. So for today on Microsoft Teams, there are 2 quizzes. Quiz 1 is if you're going to be doing the bronze challenge, and you will see it labeled bronze. And then quiz 2 is called silver and gold. So there is a mixture of these questions and a mixture of these questions. So even if you've only chosen the silver challenge, I would like you to try and do some of the gold ones as well. But before you do the quiz on Microsoft Teams, these slides are here to help you do some practice first. So if you practice enough of these on a piece of paper at home, when it comes to doing your quiz, you should be able to find those answers quicker and more confidently. So I would say for about 20 minutes, I would do some practice examples, and then the quiz should take you about 15 minutes, which will take you up for an hour's math lesson, which is what we normally do at school. So go back to the slide that you'd like to practice first. And then when you finish practicing, go into Microsoft Teams and complete the quiz. And just remember that when you are doing the quiz, you are welcome to still use a piece of paper to work out the sums. We're not expecting you, especially these ones, to know it out of your head. So have fun, and we will be doing some more of this tomorrow as well.